Picture two men standing in a modern strength competition. The first has spent 8 years in the gym. He is 220 pounds. His chest is broad, his arms are thick. He has tracked his macros, followed his program, and done everything modern training told him to do. By every visual metric available, he is the definition of physical strength. The second man is 5 feet 9 inches. He weighs 175 pounds. He has never touched a barbell, never counted a gram of protein. He does not look weak, though next to the first man he looks ordinary. But then he does something that baffles everyone. He walks up to a 400-pound stone and picks it up, completely without visible effort, while the man who spent 8 years in the gym stands behind him, having already failed. Now, here is what makes this genuinely uncomfortable. This is not a thought experiment designed to make a point. This is what the bones document. The bone density and muscle attachment markers found in average Viking men rival the signatures that modern sports medicine associates with elite trained athletes. These are not selected warriors, not exceptional individuals, but average men of their time. So the question is not whether Vikings were strong. The bones have already answered that. The question is how a body that is not built for size develops the strength profile of an elite athlete, and what that has to do with something modern training stopped building a very long time ago. Stay to the end, because by the time the mechanism is fully clear, the way you look at that first man will be permanently different. But before the explanation, the proof needs to be precise. Because Viking strength is documented in physical evidence, not saga exaggeration, and understanding exactly what that evidence shows is what makes the mechanism meaningful. In 2007, Per Holk published his analysis of 185 femoral specimens spanning prehistoric, Viking Age, and medieval Scandinavian populations. The Viking Age bones stood apart because what they found was an elevated bone mineral density consistent with sustained high mechanical loading across an entire lifetime. It is the kind of density that modern sports medicine associates with athletes who have been loading their bodies under significant resistance for decades. And in 2012, Anna Kjellström found something more specific. She found repetitive stress markers in the shoulders, backs, and forearms, the precise bone remodeling signatures that sports physicians use to identify high-load athletes today. These are the same indicators you find in Olympic rowers, professional wrestlers, and in men whose bodies have been placed under sustained functional demand for years. But here is the number that stops researchers cold. These men were 5'8" to 5'10" by skeletal reconstruction, 170 to 185 pounds. That is not massive. Not anything close to the build that modern training associates with that kind of strength profile. Still, the bone density and the stress markers document a level of functional strength that the body size alone cannot account for. That means the size was not producing the strength. Something else was. And that something was not what modern strength training is built around. The question the bones cannot answer on their own is this: what was happening in Viking daily life that drove those adaptations? Because whatever it was not a program. And it was not optimized. It was something that produced elite-level physical markers in average men, as a byproduct of simply staying alive. So forget training splits. What Vikings had was something the fitness industry has never found a way to package or sell. A life that simply would not function if they were weak. Every single day, from the moment a Viking boy was old enough to pull a rope, his body was placed under a specific type of physical demand, continuously across every waking hour, with real consequences for failure. 5 types of demand in particular, each one targeting a different physical quality, and each one producing an adaptation that modern training has quietly stopped building. And it starts with ships. A single stroke of a longship oar activates approximately 86% of the body's total muscle mass. The legs drive the push, the hips extend, the core braces to transfer force, the back pulls, and the arms finish. And it was not a training session. It was a survival requirement. Then there was portage. The Varangian trade route required Viking traders to physically carry their boats overland across the land bridges between river systems. Therefore, they basically performed a loaded carry, with a curved, irregular, shifting wooden hull on your shoulders, across uneven terrain, for miles. There is no movement in modern strength training that fully replicates that demand, because no machine or barbell produces a load that shifts unpredictably while you move over unstable ground. Next, they had Glima, a Norse form of wrestling which almost every male competed in regularly. It was actual combat against an opponent who fights back and adapts. The unpredictable, living resistance of another human body is the maximum possible stimulus for what neuroscientists call motor unit recruitment, the nervous system firing as many muscle fibers as possible simultaneously, as fast as possible, in real-time coordination. Add to that axe work. The Gokstad ship required thousands of individually hand-hewn planks. Axe work is a full rotational movement in the transverse plane, performed under load across an entire working day. And finally, stone lifting. The tradition was simple. Pick up the stone and carry it as far as you could. No handles. Just a heavy, irregular, rounded boulder that shifts in your hands with every step and punishes any weakness in your grip, your core, or your stabilizers immediately. Look at the pattern across every one of those activities. None of them allowed a fixed movement path. None offered a predictable load. None came with a scheduled rest interval. The resistance changed every moment: water current, opponent movement, shifting stone, and uneven ground. A body that adapts to constant unpredictability does not just get stronger in the patterns it practiced. It develops a nervous system calibrated for maximum output under any condition. That explains the strength. But it does not yet explain why none of it produced the 280-pound bodybuilder. For that, the science goes somewhere that most people in a commercial gym have never been taken. Here is the distinction that changes everything. And here is why modern training has a financial incentive to make sure you never fully understand it. It's called thermodynamics. The Herstwick Research Organization estimates that Viking farm and maritime labor demanded over 10,000 kilocalories of energy expenditure per day. Their diet was built around fish, dairy, grain, and moderate meat. It was adequate and sufficient, but it wasn't a chronic caloric surplus. Instead, it was high output, matched by adequate but not excessive input, and size requires surplus. The biology is unambiguous on this. You cannot build significant mass without a consistent caloric surplus to fuel tissue growth. No surplus, no bulk. Viking daily life burned more than it stored, by structural default, not deliberate design. So the body stayed lean because the energy equation left it no other choice. But the thermodynamics only explain the absence of bulk. They do not explain the presence of freakish strength. For that, the mechanism goes somewhere more interesting. The American College of Sports Medicine is clear in its progression models for resistance training. The primary driver of strength gains during varied, high-demand, unpredictable loading is neural adaptation. This means the nervous system learns to fire more muscle fibers simultaneously, to fire them faster, and to coordinate them with greater precision, without the muscle itself needing to grow. A 2020 study published in MDP1 compared force production in bodybuilders and powerlifters at equivalent muscle size. The bodybuilders and powerlifters had similar amounts of muscle. The force production differed significantly, and the difference was not structural, it was neural. What that means for Vikings is this: their varied, unpredictable, high-consequence daily loading was not building a bigger engine. It was building better wiring, a nervous system calibrated over decades to extract maximum force from whatever muscle mass was present. The strength came first. The mass never needed to follow, and the caloric balance ensured it never did. But there is one final piece that ties the entire mechanism together, and it is the most underestimated quality in modern training. In 1906, a neurologist named Charles Sherrington documented something that every strength athlete should understand, and most do not. He called it irradiation. The principle is this: when the hand grips at maximum tension, that tension does not stay in the hand. It radiates up through the forearm, into the triceps. It locks the shoulder. It hardens the core. So white-knuckle grip does not only measure hand strength, but it activates the entire kinetic chain simultaneously. Now look back at every single Viking activity described in this video. Every activity had a maximum grip, with real consequences. Every day, for decades. A Viking's grip was trained across every waking hour of every physical task of his existence. The cumulative neural demand, thousands of hours of maximal grip, under varied, unpredictable, high-consequence loading, produced a nervous system calibration that radiated outward into total body functional strength. So they had better wiring, activated at its root by grip. The only question that remains is whether the same wiring can be built deliberately by a man who does not have a longship, a portage route, or a gleamer opponent waiting for him in the morning. So we go back to the 175-pound man and the 400-pound stone. The mechanism is now clear. He is lifting it because his nervous system has been calibrated through decades of rowing, carrying, wrestling, and gripping under real consequence to fire every available muscle fiber simultaneously in full coordination at maximum output. And here is what you can change starting this week. Replace one fixed path exercise per session with an irregular load. Sandbag, kettlebell, farmer carry, loaded carry over uneven terrain. The unpredictability is the precise stimulus that forces neural adaptation rather than motor pattern economy. Make grip a foundation, not a finisher. Try dead hangs, farmer carries, thick bar work. Your grip ceiling is your functional strength ceiling. Sherrington's irradiation means that raising the ceiling raises everything above it simultaneously. Train in the 3 to 5 rep range for at least one compound movement per session. Neural adaptation, the mechanism that built Viking strength, dominates that range. 3 to 5 minutes between those sets. Vary your demands across the week. The accidental periodization of Viking daily life with different demands, different muscle groups, and different movement planes is replicable deliberately. The bones have been in the ground for over 1,000 years. The wiring system that produced them is still available in every dead hang, every loaded carry, every irregular grip, every unpredictable demand you place on a body that was designed for exactly this. The 220-pound man is still standing next to the stone. The wiring is what you build next.